LiSTNR production.
Hey, Bension Siebert here with the briefing. Ye, and I cannot stress this enough, whore. Unless you've been under a rock somewhere over the weekend, you'll know Beyoncé has released her massive studio album, Cowboy Carter. It's the latest example we've seen of a long trend in pop and R&B artists and others getting into country music, which is going really mainstream. So what's behind the growing popularity of country music, and what's the significance of black artists like Beyoncé diving into the genre and breaking records all along the way? Listener journalist Loren Howarth joins me now. So Loren, we'll get to Beyoncé's massive new album over the weekend in a moment. But first, let's go back a few years to the last time a major black artist exploded onto the country music scene and all the controversy around that at the time. It was, of course, Lil Nas X with Old Town Road. Can you tell us what happened there?
Yeah, so Lil Nas X first released that song independently online in late 2018. He actually bought the beat from some guy off this online store for like $30. And then it became massive. Yeah, crazy, right? And then it became huge on TikTok. It even made it to the Billboard charts. And it made history as well by charting on the pop, rap and country charts all at the same time. But then Billboard turned around and decided to remove the song from its top 100 country list. It claimed that it lacked elements of today's country music in its current version. So the song blended elements of both rap and country music, what Lil Nas X calls country trap. And many suggested that the decision to remove the song from the charts was racially motivated. And here's a little bit of Lil Nas X actually talking to the New York Times about this decision.
I see it as more of like we let certain things slide, but maybe this one is too different. If we allow this, who knows?
And then, of course, Billy Ray Cyrus jumped on the song. And then a few months later, the song lands #1 on the main Billboard Hot 100 chart, and it stayed there for a record-setting 19 weeks.
Okay, so let's talk about Beyoncé. Her new album has dropped over the weekend.
Of course, Beyoncé, yep, everyone's been loving it. It doesn't seem, though, that Beyoncé wants to actually associate her new album with the country genre, even though, everyone's describing it as a country album. In an Instagram post the other day, she said, "This ain't a country album, this is a Beyoncé album." And then she went on to say, "This album has been over 5 years in the making. It was born out of an experience that I had years ago when I did not feel welcomed, and it was very clear that I wasn't." And there are still some people that are against big artists like Beyoncé making country music. I'm not sure if you might have heard, but a few weeks ago, there was this country music station over in the US, in the state of Oklahoma. They're called KYKC, and they refused to play Texas Hold'em, which of course is around everywhere. And when listeners asked for it, the station said, "We do not play Beyoncé on KYKC as we are a country music station." But then, of course, Beyoncé fans, they bombarded the station with thousands of emails and phone calls, and then they eventually added the song to its playlist. And just going on with a bit more about Beyoncé, she this year actually became the first black woman to top Billboard's Hot Country Songs chart with Texas Hold'em. And I had a chat with Dr. Toby Martin. So he's a senior lecturer in contemporary music at Sydney University, and he's a musician himself. And he told me that it's significant that an artist like Beyoncé is releasing country music, and it's also boosted streams for other black country stars along the way.
It's an awesome political statement, Beyoncé releasing a country song, because it's going to piss off racists, which is great. It's saying that people of colour belong in the country music scene just as white people do. And the history of country music is there's been all sorts of artists of colour. I mean, African American artists, Latino artists, Native American artists in Australia. A lot of First Nations artists as well. That's always been the case.
So when a lot of people think of country music, it might be kind of white guy on a tractor.
Yes.
But as with her last album, Beyoncé had a real nod to black, queer and ballroom culture with Renaissance. And now in Cowboy Carter, we're also seeing Beyoncé really nod to the black roots of country music.
Yeah, and I really think that she is challenging that perception that you just talked about. You know, when you think of country music, you think of old guys on tractors out in their farms and everything. But, you know, Beyoncé is one of the queens of pop. So it's really important and quite significant that she is kind of dipping her toes into this space, especially since she said she didn't even feel welcome in the country music scene. And she's kind of creating her own lane, I think, as well. And I asked Toby, who we just heard from, about this, and this is what he had to say.
The origins of country music are many. One of the really important origins is the string band. And the string band is really an African-American phenomenon of like banjos and fiddles and, you know, and that kind of thing. And so I think that Beyoncé is really showcasing that history and claiming it as a Black history. And so this is a great moment, I think, to recognise that and celebrate that, and think that, yeah, country music is not just the white guy on the tractor. It's like so rich and diverse.
And what about country music in Australia?
Yeah, so even though country music seems to be really popping off right now and having a real moment, its popularity here and around the world, of course, is actually nothing new. Toby, though, told me that the popularity here has been growing over the last kind of 10 years especially. And a report on industry data last year by Illuminate actually found that Australia is the third biggest market for country music, only behind the US and Canada. And there's this real festival scene as well. Of course, you got the Tamworth Country Music Festival, and that draws as many as 40,000 visitors to Australia's country music capital over the 10-day event. You've also got CMC Rocks. It's got around 23,000 people. They attended this year. And Toby told me that the festival scene for country music is growing here as well, because he's found that the music is becoming more approachable and more people are listening to it.
Country is becoming less and less a rural, big hat, singing about the farm phenomenon, and it's becoming much more about telling stories and singing songs about all aspects of life. And I mean, really, this is kind of getting back to its roots. I mean, this is how when country started in the 1920s and 30s, it was the pop music of the time. It was the punk music of the day, or the hip hop. I mean, it was like the newest youth culture telling all sorts of stories. It kind of went more sort of fringe and into the bush, but now it's sort of coming back again.
And I think something to note, though, is you've got all these kind of country music festivals more inland Australia. You don't really see any in Sydney or Melbourne or any of the capital cities. So, but I know a few people do travel from the city inland to go and see these country music festivals. So that's just something that I find quite interesting.
And of course, we can't talk about the rise of popular country music without talking about Taylor Swift. She's also played a big role in that. Could you talk to me a bit about that role that she's played?
Yeah, of course. So according to Billboard, the country music landscape is much different today because of Taylor. They've described her as the first country act whose fame extended beyond the US. Her music charted in places like Asia and the UK, where country music had never really been popular before. And they kind of said that she offered this modern and youthful sound in a genre that traditionally, you know, represented conservatism and older adults. And I spoke to Toby from Sydney University about this, and also about what country music might look and sound like in the future. And he said that Taylor is a great example of how artists, they no longer have to, you know, stick strongly to one genre. They can kind of dip their toes into all sorts of things. Taylor, of course, started in country, moved to pop, folk. She's kind of done it all. And we're also seeing alternative artists like Lana Del Rey planning on releasing a country album this year. The same for rapper Post Malone, you know, going from rap to country, very big jump there. He's working on a collab with country music star Morgan Wallen. And then you've got, of course, Beyoncé, who we've been talking all about her today. And so, yeah, let's bring back in Toby for just a bit more on what we can expect in the future.
Artists these days don't have to strongly sit in a country music camp or a pop camp. They can kind of cross over. And I think their audience are willing to go with them. And for me, that is what I see happening over the next decade or so, is more of that fluidity between genres, which is always a good thing. I mean, having this firm fixation between genres has the effect of blocking people out. And so to have a kind of a breakdown of those genre walls is always a good thing for music.
Yeah, and just going on what Toby just said there about their audience willing to go with them. I mean, myself, I'm not a huge country music fan, have never really listened to it, but I'm a massive Lana Del Rey fan, and honestly, if she dropped country music tomorrow and she's going to drop it later this year, I'm there for it. I'm listening nonstop.
Absolutely. I mean, I think all of this just shows how much musicians can lead the audience. Because if you'd asked me 10 years ago about whether or not I'd be keen on a country music album from Beyonce, I would be like, what are you talking about?
You would not even think about it.
Yeah, and when Renaissance came out, like I'm a queer person, and I was just like, what is she doing? What is this?
What's going on?
And over maybe a year and a half, it became like the most frequent thing that I started listening to. So I feel like it's an exciting time to be alive.
I agree. We're kind of like, finding ourselves listening to new music that, we never really would have thought to listen to before if it wasn't for our favourite artist dropping it. So, I'm excited to see what happens in the future.
Absolutely. Well, what an exciting time to be alive. Loren, thanks so much for joining us again on The Briefing.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Loren Howarth there. That's it for The Briefing today. Check your feed again from 6 a.m. tomorrow for our next episode. In the meantime, if you enjoy The Briefing, please tell a friend or 20 about the podcast. I'm Bension Siebert. Catch you next time.